criminal, collaborator, traitor. These are three of the accusations made against Anton Müssert, the leader of the National Socialist movement in the Netherlands during World War II. Almost all of the countries occupied by the Germans had such men, who were very often fringe political figures before the German takeover, but under Nazi patronage rose to become puppet leaders. One of the prime examples of such a traitor was the Norwegian politician Vidkun Quisling, whose surname has become a byword for treachery, who sold out his own country to the Germans in return for some mostly symbolic power and influence. These men hailed from different political backgrounds. Some were ideologues, some were extreme right politicians or vehement nationalists, others were united in their hatred for communism. The Germans played on these ideas to use these homegrown right-wing political parties to recruit soldiers for the foreign legions of the Waffen-SS and to help the Nazi police state persecute and often murder groups that they disliked. Unless you are that, it's unlikely that you have ever heard of Anton Müssert, but he held between 1942 and 1945 the grandiose title of Leader of the Dutch People. A civil engineer by training, Müssert was born in May 1894 in the province of North Brabant. In 1914, he joined the Royal Netherlands Army, serving the artillery branch, rising to the rank of corporal. What is it exactly about corporals becoming dictators? In 1917, Müssert married his own aunt, his mother's sister, who was 18 years older than him, which must have raised a few eyebrows, not to mention turned a few stomachs, making his mother his own sister-in-law. During the economic downturn of the 1920s, he became active in right-wing politics. In December 1931, with 11 like-minded colleagues, Müssert founded the National Socialist movement in the Netherlands, modelled, of course, on the National Socialists of Germany and his hero Adolf Hitler. The Dutch party was known throughout its existence as the NSB. Incredibly, in the early days, the NSB even contained several hundred Jewish members, until Hitler's Nazi party demanded that the NSB go further down the road of anti-Semitism, and the Jewish members were expelled at Müssert's order. At the 1935 general election, the NSB did relatively well for a Finnish party, polling 300,000 votes, or 8% of the total, but support for it halved the following year. By 1939, on the outbreak of war, the NSB was polling only 2.5% of the national vote in the Netherlands. The NSB was rapidly becoming an embarrassment. But the hardcore of the party adored Müssert as a charismatic public speaker. At this time, as well as being married to his own child, Müssert was also having an affair with his own niece, another interesting parallel to Hitler, who it was alleged had a sexual affair with his half-niece, Davy Raubel. There were, however, no half-measures with Müssert. Müssert knew that his party could never win total power in the Netherlands, so he hoped that Hitler would eventually take over the country, and the NSB was a sort of fifth column that the Germans would use to help their invasion when it came. The Germans captured the Netherlands in May 1940 and immediately banned all political parties, except, that is, the NSB, which though a small fringe group of right-wing extremists was now able to curry considerable favour with the new masters and offer active assistance to the occupation regime. Müssert had already met Hitler face-to-face in 1936, but the Führer did not have a very high opinion of the NSB leader, perhaps sensing some weakness in his character. Müssert was therefore not given leadership of the Netherlands in 1940. Instead, a foreigner was appointed as Rijkskommissar, or Nazi Governor-General of the Netherlands, Austrian Dr. Arthur Seyss-Inquart, who came fresh from a series of war crimes he had committed in Poland. Most Dutch people, of course, hated the German occupation, and many involved themselves in resistance activities. But the Netherlands is a small country, with the densest population in Europe, and active resistance was very difficult. But the Dutch became masters of passive resistance, such as hiding people. Thousands of defeated Allied soldiers left over from Dunkirk, shot down airmen and Jews were hidden at enormous risk by loyal Dutch citizens, and the Gestapo was brutal in its attempts to infiltrate and destroy resistance networks and escape routes. And Muzet and his black-uniformed NSB followers curried favour with Hitler by directly assisting the Germans, leading to many deaths and much suffering among the Dutch population. Soon after the German occupation began, Himmler's SS persuaded Muzet to permit NSB members to start training with the Waffen-SS. One of Muzet's deputies, Johannes Feldmayer, was ordered to create a Dutch SS unit for service with the Germans. In total, upwards of 25,000 Dutchmen, many of them NSB members, served throughout World War II in various Waffen-SS brigades and divisions, fighting on the Eastern Front against the Soviets. In January 1941, Himmler invited Muzet to Munich to discuss SS recruitment in the Netherlands. This led in February 1941 to the Nazis using Muzet to oversee the formation of the 23rd SS Volunteer Panzergrenadier Division, Nederland. The Netherlands was an imperial power as well as a European country, controlling several overseas colonies, the most prominent of which was the Dutch East Indies, now Indonesia. This posed a problem following the German conquest of the mother country. Hitler naturally only controlled the Netherlands, not the far-flung colonies, which came into the Allied camp and its personnel served against the Germans. When Germany's ally, Japan, launched its attacks in Southeast Asia and the Pacific from December 1941 onwards, the Dutch colonial administration in the East Indies declared war on Japan. The Japanese successfully captured the Dutch East Indies and interned under horrific conditions, stories that I have covered in great detail in some of my earlier books, 100,000 Dutch colonists and 50,000 white Dutch soldiers. This meant that the major possession of the Dutch Empire had now been conquered by an ally of Germany. The Queen of the Netherlands and the royal family had fled in 1940 ahead of the German invasion to England, and the Dutch government in exile had set up shop in London, and all loyal Dutch citizens recognized the government in exile as the true government of the country. But Muzet saw a fresh opportunity at this stage to increase his stature. It began whilst the Japanese were still fighting Dutch and Allied troops in the East Indies, when on the 12th of December 1941, Muzet had an audience with Hitler at the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, accompanied by Seyss Inquart, swearing allegiance to Hitler with the following words, quote, "I swear to you, Adolf Hitler, as Germanic leader, faithfully to death. So truly help me God." End quote. This oath, Muzet placed Germany's interests above those of the Dutch people. Just over a year later, on the 13th of December 1942, Muzet was proclaimed by Adolf Hitler leader of the Dutch people. But it was all symbolic. Seyss Inquart was the real master of the Netherlands. The Dutch SS came under Himmler's control, and though Muzet and his companions were accorded outward respect by the Nazis, and he and his supporters actively collaborated with the German security police and occupation authorities in the terrorization and persecution of the Dutch people, Muzet never had any real power. Hitler confirmed this to his face at their last meeting in May 1943. However, Muzet and many of his followers were able to line their pockets on the back of Nazi atrocities. Jews had their houses taken from them, and Muzet permitted NSB members to put these houses up for auction and sell them for virtually nothing. He was an accessory to such theft. By 1945, Muzet was quite rich. Using his girlfriend and mother to hide his wealth, it was revealed that he owned 5 houses and several companies, and was a millionaire, some of the money coming from extorting Jewish-owned companies and Jewish families, and helping himself to the property of Jews deported to the camps in Poland. As leader of the Dutch people, he sat back and watched as the Allies began the reconquest of the Netherlands, beginning with Field Marshal Montgomery's Operation Market Garden in September 1944, which unfortunately failed. and the resulting protracted ground fighting that occurred throughout 1944 into 1945, that resulted eventually in the Western Netherlands being completely cut off from the rest of German-controlled Europe. Müssert said nothing during the Dutch famine of 1944-45, when the German occupiers allocated most of the remaining food in the country for its own use, causing hunger to break out among the civilian population, with 18,000 Dutch civilians dying of malnutrition and disease. Under the German occupation from May 1940 to May 1945, about 206,000 Dutch citizens had lost their lives. Müssert and the NSB aided and abetted the policies and police actions that caused many of these deaths. However, due to the Allied advance cutting off Western Holland, Müssert and his cronies couldn't run away like the collaborationist Vichy French government, who evacuated into Germany when France was reconquered by the Allies. Müssert was at his office in The Hague when the German forces in the Netherlands surrendered on the 7th of May 1945. Dutch resistance members were quickly on the scene and arrested him and his followers. However, Reichskommissar Seyss-Inquart was not in the Netherlands at the end of the war. Following Hitler's death on the 30th of April 1945, the new Reich President, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, had established a government in northern Germany, on the border with Denmark. Seyss-Inquart was appointed, in Hitler's political testament, the new foreign minister of the Reich, replacing the disgraced Joachim von Ribbentrop. Seyss-Inquart was on his way back from a meeting with Dönitz when he was grabbed by British troops on a bridge in Hamburg on the 7th of May 1945. He would be dealt with by the Nuremberg trials and hanged on the 16th of October 1946. Müssert was to be tried by his own people for what he had done. He was convicted of high treason on the 28th of November 1945 following a two-day trial. 12th of December, he was sentenced to death. His plea for clemency was rejected by Queen Wilhelmina. On the 7th of May 1946, the one-year anniversary of his capture, he was executed by firing squad at a place in The Hague where hundreds of his fellow countrymen had been killed by the German occupation authorities. He was buried in a mass grave in an undisclosed location in the local general cemetery. All across Europe, there were a wave of executions of quislings and traitors, those who had ultimately sold out their own people and betrayed their own nation. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.
Стой! Осторожно! Какая усталость! Это все, что ты можешь! Покажи мне, что ты можешь!
О, боги! Пусть лучше как можно!
Помогите!
Пусть лучше они, чем я.
Ты думаешь, я под впечатлением? Произошло убийство!
Можно.
Кончится здесь! Произошло убийство! Убийство! Произошло убийство! Убийство!
Как поживаешь? Приветствую. Как поживаешь?
Салют! Приветствую, сестра!
Так.
Сейчас ты упадешь и стечешь кровью.
Не умереть!
Тебе
Не одолеть меня!
ничтожество! И стечешь кровью. Тебе все, что ты можешь. Помогите!
Пусть лучше раньше, чем я.
Я под впечатлением. Все, что ты можешь. Что ты можешь?
О, боги! Пусть лучше раньше, чем я. О, боги! Пусть лучше раньше, чем я. О, боги! Пусть лучше раньше, чем я.
Все кончится здесь.
О, боги! Пусть лучше раньше, чем я.
Тебе.
О, боги! Пусть лучше раньше, чем я.
И сейчас ты упадешь и стечешь кровью.
О, боги! Пусть лучше они, чем я.